All right. Well, thank you all for this amazing session today. My name is Dami Osunsanya. I am on the advisory board of AI4ALL, working with this amazing team, and have the honor of introducing you to four young people who are part of AI4ALL's official alumni community, Changemakers in AI. I'm Dami Osunsanya. I work for SoftBank, um, SoftBank Group International. And I've had the opportunity to watch companies like Uber, WeWork, DoorDash scale, and I was very inspired to work with AI4ALL just by the basis of knowing that technology is the future of our generation, and how do we make sure that diversity is included in the future. So today I co-head a part of SoftBank called the SoftBank SoftBank Opportunity Fund, a $100 million fund for Black, Latinx, Native American founders in the US. We have over 75 founders in the portfolio and continue to grow. So today, each of the change makers will we'll talk about projects they've worked on with AI4ALL support. I can't wait to see what they all are accomplishing. Let's start by meeting Chidozie Naji, who wants to provide more mental health support for friends and others in the community through an AI-driven chat box. Cue video.
My name is Chidozie Naji. I'm an 11th grader that's from Michigan, and I have a passion for programming and helping people. My interest in computers started when I was a kid, to be honest, but I feel like that interest really was emphasized the first time I watched Iron Man, and being able to see him and Jarvis just talking, having an actual conversation, that really sparked an interest in me, saying that maybe one day I could do that. And over time, although I did not have the resources or did not know where to start, it did help me, having the passion to begin with, because I know that every time I know I want to do something, I'll try what I can to do it. So having the passion in me allowed me to ask questions to my Wolverine Pathways advisors that helped me introduce me to AI4ALL, which AI4ALL then helped me to grow that passion and give me the skills necessary to keep going. I feel like there's a lot of potential to begin with AI, because there's a lot it can do without us actually thinking it can do it. For example, let's say somebody that's blind, where they can't see correctly, or they have a training dog that helps them see. We could give somebody, not me, but somebody could build them glasses that helps them send neural links or neural information to their brain, saying that that's a box, that's a pencil. And with that, they can even develop that even more to add for the person to actually not only process the information at the light speed of the eye would have, but it can process it faster than that, showing how much of an impact something as small as somebody's reading glasses can have on somebody. It was not a thing of knowing if I can do it, because most of my projects are being done because I want to see if I can do it. Because I've always had multiple wants and needs of things that I want to do in life, but not knowing if I might have the skill to do, which is another reason I programmed to begin with. Because the sense of a challenge and accomplishing a goal or a difficult task was always, it was like my own personal joy. Like I had an error in a code and then I solved it, and then for the next 5 minutes I would jump around and start screaming and talk about I did it. And which is what happened last night when I was working on another project. And which is why I built it to begin with, because like I mentioned, the interest with Jarvis, so having something like that is not exactly like Jarvis, but it can be, was like I accomplished a childhood goal. First, to talk about the tools I used for the project. The project was a two-part project, being that it had to have a server and a client side, or a client app, I should say. The client app did two main things. First, it read the user's text messages and then sent it to the server for processing. And the second thing this app did was it needed to be able to translate the user's voice into text, being that I could not do that over the server because there was no way I could, well, no way I knew was to transmit audio raw audio bytes to the server and then process it to the server and then send it back to the user, which was a little bit too hectic. So I had to run the audio transcription, or I should say speech recognition, in the client app, and I was also needed to be able to send messages. The speech recognition part, I used a module called Vox.js, VOSJ.js, which collected the user's audio stream and then turned that into text, and then I was able to send that back to the server. So when the server got the message, the first thing it did was to process the message, which was it checked the message and then check its actual commands that it can actually do and check the similarities between the two, which is why I mentioned if the most similar command between are you and the most similar command response for how are you is I am fine, then it will return I am fine to the user. But that's not the only thing the server did, being that it had different features, or features is what I like to call commands. Well, not really commands, more of things that it can do. So if one of the commands was set the weather or tell me the weather for so and so location, it would then use web scrape, which is another thing that the server needed to do. It will then web scrape a trusted website and get the degrees from that website and use the most found degrees and return that back to the user. That was the first thing. That was another thing it did. And then if another command was to say set a timer, it would then set the time. It would first get the user time zone, because not everybody using the app is in the same time zone. It would get the user time zone, then transcribe it to the server time zone so everything would be the same. And then based on that, it would set the time for wherever the time the user wanted it to be. And once this time is set, it would then send it to the user saying the time has been set. You can do so and so now. And lastly, we had the news articles, which was a little bit more hard because first I had to web scrape Google for the URLs for different news sites, because Google has more trusted news site than I know of. And then I had to web scrape each site and then send back use the same similarities I use for the commands, but this time for the websites to say which one was more similar to a certain topic. So it was also a classification issue with AI, where I had to look at the different news sites and say, okay, this one can be classified as about weather, or this can be classified about Trump or something like that. And then based on that, it has a higher classification. Then we can say, okay, this is the most trusted site, then let's send this data back to the user. And then I summarize that data so it wouldn't be too much to send back, because some news articles are very long. So I summarized it, which also uses supervised learning to summarize it to only get the key sentences from the sentence, and summarize that article, and then send it back to the user and saying, if you want to read more, you can go to this URL. I was just genuinely happy when it worked, because it was a big project and it was the first time I actually stepped into the intersection between AI and computer programming. So for it to work, it took a bunch of times before it worked. I'm gonna be real honest. So for it to actually work, I was happy. I was walking around smiling for a good hour or 30 minutes, can't remember. And then when it finally worked, the next thing I did was say, okay, what next? Because I know, because although the happiness didn't fade away, it was still saying, I know this can do more, which is why I then looked on all the sites for other inspiration of what to do next with it, which is why I came across Replica, the chatbot. And then that's why I noticed the potential it could actually have. AI4ALL was a big part of that, being that, like I said, I would not even begin with Python or even know what resources I can go to learn different languages if it wasn't for AI4ALL. Because I think I remember this was about the last day, or probably not even the last day. They sent us a Google document saying that this or so-and-so site you can use to practice your Python skills. And then one of those sites was Code Academy. And the first time I went on that site, it was really colorful, and it just had all the images there. I was like, okay, this seems fun and engaging. I created an account, and then the first language that came up was Python, and I was learning it. I was like, wow, it was just that iceberg moment. where you know everything from here just goes. Yeah. With the pandemic, everybody was by themselves. And with that, people were not really able to conversate with each other. And some people could handle that I should not say loneliness, but I should rather say isolation. But some people could not because being alone with yourself continuously can force you to notice different habits that can notice how toxic certain things are. For example, a lot of people's relationship ended because they noticed the person they're being with was toxic. And with that relationship ending, it left a huge gap with them, causing some mental illness for some people. Some people went back to relationships that were too toxic, and it was just a whole bunch of mess. Um, so with that, like if you I forgot which website it was, but there was a website that shows how with the pandemic, therapists themselves gained a lot of revenue, being that people had a lot of mental illness, not mental illness, but came a lot of issues came to light with that. So they needed somebody to talk to, which is what therapists came around. But there's always a limited amount of therapists in the world, but an unlimited amount of how much a bot can do. So with that, which is where the bot came in, which is why I want to shift the bot from an assistant to a chatbot to allow people to have that thing to talk to rather than always feeling like they had to keep it to themselves or they had to pay certain amount of money to a therapist to talk about this. I'm not trying to put therapists out of business because I know how useful they are. Sometimes people just really need human connection. But what I'm trying to do is provide all the resources rather than just one.